Hey everyone, and welcome back to the House of Suain. In this video, I wanted to go over 20 plus kettlebell exercises that you can add to your home workouts or help you follow along every week when I put out a conditioning video. I hope it helps you in some way, shape, or form, whether it be adding brand new exercises to what you're already doing or helping you focus on small details to exercises that you already knew. Either way, enjoy the motivation. All right, so first up we have the kettlebell deadlift. The main focuses I have on the deadlift is making sure my back stays neutral, and the kettlebell, when it touches the floor, it lands mid-foot. Now throughout the video, I'll jump between a lighter kettlebell and a heavier kettlebell, just to show that form should not be sacrificed due to a heavier weight. Now our next movement is a single arm kettlebell. I'm still thinking of making sure that my back stays neutral and the kettlebell lands mid-foot. Now one of the difficulties of this, and you can see right here, is keeping your back neutral and making sure you're not reaching over to the side that the kettlebell's on. So a trick you can do is sort of hold the free hand up like you're talking on the phone, to make sure that you're engaging that side of the body to keep your back neutral. So our next deadlift variation is going to be a sumo deadlift. So we're going to have a wider stance, which is going to allow for a more comfortable range of motion when reaching over. But again, I'm still focusing on making sure my back stays neutral and the kettlebell lands mid-foot. So next we have our sumo deadlift high pull. So the first half, we're going to execute that sumo deadlift, but once our hips are fully extended, we're going to use that momentum that was generated and pull the kettlebell handle up to our collarbone. Again, I still want that kettlebell to land mid-foot, and as it's going up to my collarbone, I want to keep it as close to my body as possible, with my elbows flaring high and outside. And to build on the difficulty of the sumo deadlift high pull, we'll do single arm sumo deadlift high pulls. Same ideas, still want the kettlebell landing mid-foot. Use that momentum generated by full hip extension to pull the kettlebell handle up to your collarbone. All right, next is our Russian kettlebell swings. Here we're using our full hip extension to generate momentum to push the kettlebell to eye level. We're not trying to use our upper back and deltoids to just kind of muscle the kettlebell to eye level. We want to use that power we're generating from our hips. All right, our next progression is that American kettlebell swing. So with the American kettlebell swing, the kettlebell will go all the way above your head, arms locked out, and then back down. Again, we're still trying to use momentum generated from our hips, not trying to muscle it with our upper body only. The heavier the kettlebell gets, the less likely you'll be able to just use your upper body to muscle it over you. All right, now we have our single arm Russian kettlebell swings. So this time we're just going to be using one arm, bringing that kettlebell to eye level, still focusing on making sure we're getting full hip extension to help generate that momentum so the kettlebell can meet us at eye level. All right, now we have our goblet squat. So all this is, we're holding the kettlebell handle outward, nice and steady in front of us with both hands, tuck the elbows in, and we're just gonna perform a front squat. My focus on this exercise is making sure my elbows stay as close together as they can. That's gonna keep the weight of the kettlebell going through my forearm and not just on my wrist. And also pushing my knees outward when I'm executing that squat. All right, so this next movement is gonna be the front rack squat. So the kettlebell is being held in what we call the front rack position. So out in front of us, resting on our deltoid, bicep, and forearm in a nice little pocket. This position is gonna cause some instability in your body because there's weight only on one side, but that's good, and we're gonna focus on stabilizing our core as we're executing these squats. All right, now we have our kettlebell press. We're not gonna use any momentum here. It's just gonna be from that front rack position with two hands, and we're just gonna press the kettlebell overhead. Now make sure when you're pushing the kettlebell overhead, you bring your head through to where your deltoids are in line with your ears. That's to make sure that you're getting that full range of motion with the overhead press. So next we have our single arm overhead press. We're gonna start in the front rack position and just press that kettlebell straight overhead. Again, we still wanna make sure that our deltoid and our ear are in line with each other once that kettlebell is pressed overhead. We really wanna make sure we're not pushing the kettlebell too far out in front of us or too far behind us, because we'll put unnecessary stress on our shoulder. So a couple variations we have now are gonna be push presses. So with the push press, we're able to bend at the hips and at the knees and use that momentum to push the kettlebell overhead. We're still making sure that when we lock out overhead with the kettlebell, that our shoulder is in line with our ear. And we wanna make sure that we're feeling stable. So every time the kettlebell comes down, if you need to reset your body, do so. All right, so now we're gonna mix our squats and our presses to do a thruster, which is one of my favorite exercises. I think it's a full body exercise that gets everything engaged. So we're gonna perform a front squat or a goblet squat. And then once we come to the top of that goblet squat, we're gonna use that momentum to push the kettlebell overhead. All the fundamentals are the same from the previous movements. Trying to push my knees out, handle out in front of me so I don't hit my face with it. And when I'm locking out overhead, I want my shoulders to be in line with my ears. Now here we have the progression, which is the single arm thruster. This movement greatly increases the level of instability in your body. And I was definitely feeling it, especially with the heavier kettlebell. All right, now that we're done with my favorite thrusters, moving on to farmer carry lunges. So with the farmer's carry, we're just gonna hold that kettlebell on one side, keep it in line with our hip, and we're just gonna execute some lunges. The most difficult part of doing lunges with the kettlebell in one hand is the asymmetrical nature of the exercise. You can see a lot of instability in my hip when I'm leaning forward into the lunge, and that just makes the exercise that much better. And now we have the slightly more stable, but still just as difficult front rack lunge. So we're holding that kettlebell in the front rack position, and we're just gonna execute some lunges. A lot more stability in this. Your body appreciates it. The kettlebell's center of gravity is in line with your center of gravity, so there's not as much wobbling. Now we have a single arm front rack kettlebell lunge, bringing some of that instability from asymmetrical movements. And you can see right away that I was feeling it with the heavier kettlebell. And here we have what I think is one of the more difficult forms of lunges with the kettlebell, and that's the single arm overhead lunge. So this one requires a good amount of flexibility, especially in the shoulder. As you're lunging down, you'll see a lot of people tend to break down at the shoulder where the kettlebell starts to lean forward or too far back, and you don't want that. Again, you don't want that unnecessary tension on that shoulder joint. So try to practice this one with a very light weight before you move on to a heavier weight. And here we have another difficult movement, and that's the single arm overhead squat. And just like with the overhead lunge, we're trying to focus on keeping that kettlebell weight over our center of gravity. All right, so now we have the kettlebell clean. So just like with the swing, we're trying to generate as much momentum as we can from our hips to push the kettlebell up. But instead of with the swing, where the kettlebell's coming out straight in front of you, we're trying to keep it nice and close to the body and have it land in the front rack position. So right after that kettlebell clean, now that we're in the front rack, we can execute a jerk or a press in this case. So here we have our kettlebell clean and press. So we're gonna execute a kettlebell clean, and then from that front rack position, we're just gonna press the kettlebell straight overhead. Now we have our kettlebell clean and push press. So we're gonna clean the kettlebell just like we have been, nice and tight to the body, generate the power from the hips, and now we're gonna execute a push press instead of a strict press. Remember, with the push press, you're able to bend at the knees and at the hips, full extension, and use that momentum to press the kettlebell overhead. Now lastly in this progression is the kettlebell clean and jerk. So we're gonna clean the same, but with a jerk, we're gonna bend at the knees and at the hips twice in this movement. So we bend at the knees and at the hips to generate momentum going up, and then as the kettlebell is going up, we're gonna drop down below it, bending at the knees and the hips to catch the weight. Now the jerk becomes very useful when weights get heavier because it allows you to drop below the weight as it's moving upward. And here we have a very powerful movement, and that's going to be the kettlebell snatch. Now, just like with the clean, we're still generating power from our hips, And as that kettlebell is moving upwards, we're keeping it tight to the body. And once it gets just past the shoulder, you're punching towards the ceiling. And that'll get you into that locked out position. And I like to break down sometimes between each rep. So when I get it to the top, I'll rest it on my shoulder coming down and then reset. All right, folks. So as you can see, I got a little bit of a sweat going on just from demonstrating those movements. It's a great workout all on its own, but hopefully you learned something new today, whether it be small details in the movements you already knew or 20 plus new exercises you can do with your kettlebell at home. Either way, thanks for stopping by at the House of Suain. Until next time, see ya.